11 things we learned from UFC 311. This weekend's card was absolutely monumental. Even if you didn't think the fights were entertaining, you cannot deny that there were records broken and there were GOAT statuses on the line that arguably were achieved at this event. And I wanted to go through and look at some of the things we learned from this event and what happened post-event. So, yeah, let's get right into it. And in my opinion, Islam Makhachev is the lightweight GOAT. I was saying this before the fight. I thought he was already the lightweight GOAT, but this puts a stamp on it. I think people cling on to the fact that Khabib had like the dominance factor more than Islam, but outside of that, Islam clears in my opinion. Like, yeah, Khabib had the dominance, but outside of that, it's like Islam has everything else, you know? You can't just say Khabib was more dominant, so he's the lightweight GOAT. Like, it just doesn't work like that. Islam has a 15-fight win streak, whereas Khabib only had a 13. Islam, in my opinion, has faced a better competition. He now holds the record for the most title defenses in UFC lightweight history at 4. And although it was a short notice opponent in Moicano that got him that 4 title defense, you cannot deny that Moicano was in training camp. He himself admitted that he knew that this was a possibility. And it's going to be the best version of Moicano we've ever seen in his career. This guy was on a 4-fight win streak, tearing through the lightweight division, beating up guys like Jailton Turner, destroying guys like Benoit Saint Denis and Drew Dober. Like, he was on a run. And Islam said, "Who cares about your black belt? I'm going to take you down and submit you right away." And I'm not going to lie, it was hard to watch because I like Money Moicano. Hanata Moicano, he's one of my favorite fighters, but he just couldn't hang in there, man. Islam, his grappling's on a different level, man. If he gets you to the ground, especially in round 1, you're in trouble. And it showed in the fight, man. And Islam, across his 16 UFC fights total, I think he has. I think he's 15-1 in the UFC or something like that. 16 total UFC fights. I think he has 11 finishes. He's finished 8 of his 9 last wins. Pound for pound, #1 fighter in the world. 4 title defenses. Dominant in his own right. Sure, he's had wars, but in my opinion, the thing that makes him greater than Khabib is he has fought guys that challenge his style. Khabib never fought a Charles Oliveira or Arman Sarukian. You know, Khabib fought a guy like RDA, and RDA is a good grappler, but he's not a Charles Oliveira level of danger. And that's what I think puts Islam a cut above Khabib when we're talking about GOAT status, is that Islam faced a better competition. He faced guys that challenge his style, more title defenses, more finishes, longer win streak. Islam has tied tied Kamaru Usman for second place for the longest win streak in UFC history at 15. He needs 1 more to tie Anderson Silva. So if he gets that Arman fight booked again and he beats Arman, that's 16. He ties the record. And hopefully the curse doesn't strike again and he's able to get it, because I want to see this guy get the GOAT, you know? I like Islam Makhachev. He's, in my opinion, the most well-rounded fighter we've ever seen. This guy can do it all. He can box. He can kickbox. He can wrestle. He can grapple. He can submit you. He can knock you out. Granted, his knockouts aren't that common, but he has knocked out guys out cold. Look at the Volkanovski 2 fight. But yeah, in my opinion, Islam solidified himself as the lightweight GOAT. So what we learned from Islam is he's that next level, man. Doesn't matter if it's Anata Moicano, Arman Sarukian, or King Kong. He's getting the job done, and he looked good doing it. Let's get on to the next thing, which is Merab is the UFC bantamweight GOAT. Right to another GOAT status. Now, a lot of people have Dominic Cruz or Aljo or Petr Yan or someone else floating in this conversation, but listen, I'm the biggest Merab hater in the world, but after him beating Umar, there's no doubt that Merab is just that guy, and he is the bantamweight GOAT. His last 5 wins have been against who? Jose Aldo, Henry Cejudo, Sean O'Malley, Umar Nurmagomedov, and Petr Yan, and he's not barely winning these fights. Sure, his fight with Sean O'Malley was close, but he looked very impressive against Umar, and I've been Merab's biggest critic. I've been going around saying this guy's boring. He's not good. He's not skilled. He just spams cardio and takedowns. He's sloppy, but he looked improved last night, man. And I think even the narrative of him being a boring fighter is got to some degree go away. It's just not true anymore. I thought his fight with Umar last night was extremely entertaining, and yeah, man, I can take my L and say I was wrong. With Merab's status at bantamweight, he broke Georges St. Pierre's record for the most takedowns in UFC history. He now holds it at 92. He extended his own record for the longest win streak in bantamweight history at 11. He defended his title for the first time. He took Umar Nurmagomedov's undefeated record, which I myself and a lot of other people thought that this was the toughest style matchup in the entire division for him, and I think it was. And he passed it with flying colors, man. He gassed Umar out. I thought that Umar was going to look how he did in the first 2 rounds throughout the entire fight, but Merab's cardio just proved to be way too much, and yeah, He was styling on Umar in the later rounds, man. He was emoting on him. Umar was trying to take him down, and Merab was literally just screaming at Khabib, like putting his hands up in the air. Merab was showboating. This guy has the best cardio we've ever seen in UFC history. There's nobody with better cardio, and yeah, he proved me wrong. He proved a lot of people wrong. I think Merab deserves his respect. He is the UFC bantamweight GOAT. Maybe you could argue Dominic Cruz if we're talking about WEC and UFC, but if we're just talking UFC, Merab is by far the UFC bantamweight GOAT. It's not even close. I mean, 11-fight win streak. Now has beat 4 former champions and then took the undefeated record of Umar. And it's like, come on, man. What else is there to say about this guy? I, myself, am not going to doubt him anymore. I'm picking him until he retires. There's nobody that's going to... He's too overpowered. There's just nothing else to say about it. So, yeah, that's my opinion on Merab. He has stamped his way into UFC bantamweight GOAT status with this fight and proved me and a lot of other people wrong. Let's get on to the next thing we learned. We learned that Umar is elite, but Merab's just too overpowered, too built different. Listen, Umar proved that he's elite. He looked amazing in those first 2 rounds before he gassed. He looked like he was kind of a step ahead of Merab. He was defending the takedowns. You know, he was looking solid in the striking. He was... I don't want to say he was piecing up Merab, but he was holding his own. He was doing his thing. I think he was winning the fight. You could argue that Umar was up 2-0, but it doesn't matter how you start against Merab. It matters how you finish. And yeah, Merab finished the last 3 rounds dominantly, in my opinion, won him handily, and you could even argue that Merab won the first round, depending on how you scored. But yeah, man, it's tough because Umar is the third Dagestani to lose their undefeated record. There was Islam, who got KO'd by Martins, right? And then there was Ankalaev, who got triangled by Paul Craig, took his undefeated record, and then now there's Umar, who just got kind of beat up and bullied by Merab in the latter rounds to take his undefeated record. So is this the end of the Dagestani's reign, boys? Are we going to see Islam fall next? Or are we going to see Usman Nurmagomedov fall next? Are we going to see Ankalaev get KO'd and chinned again against Pereira in UFC 313? Who knows? But Merab showed that these guys can be beat. All you need is a little EPO. I'm joking. All you need is insane cardio and just a will to win. Because I think, technically speaking, Umar is better than Merab in most areas. Merab's just an attribute maxer, so it doesn't even matter. Merab has a will to win. He's the hungriest fighter in UFC history. He has the will to win, and he's just overpowered. His cardio is the best we've ever seen out of any fighter. I mean, he shot 30 takedowns against Umar and got 7. Umar, before this fight, was saying that there's no way Merab's going to break the takedown record on me. It's not going to happen. And Merab said, oh, you don't think so? Watch this. And he broke the takedown record on him. I think he shot 30 takedowns and he got 7. So although Merab doesn't have good takedown accuracy, I think his takedown accuracy is like, what, 25%? It doesn't matter, bro. Or 36%. It doesn't matter. He's not shooting takedowns to get every single one. He's shooting takedowns to keep you on edge, to tire you out, to break you. Merab broke Umar Nurmagomedov, and I think that's insane. Coming from a Khabib camp, he absolutely broke him. And I think Khabib as a coach failed Umar in a way. He wasn't really... Like, him calling for Umar to wrestle in, like, the 3rd round on was crazy. Like, dude, you're fighting Merab Dvalishvili, and you're telling this guy's game plan is to wrestle heavy in rounds 3, 4, and 5? Like, are you insane? If he couldn't take Merab down in round 1, how do you think he's going to take Merab down? Well, he did take him down, but how do you think he's going to consistently take down Merab in rounds 3, 4, and 5? So I did not think that wrestling heavy was going to be the way to victory for Umar. I think it was going to be teep kicks, staying on the outside, staying at the center of the octagon to avoid the takedowns, but he didn't do that. And yeah, man, Merab's just too good, too overpowered. Umar, I still think, is the 2nd best bantamweight in the division. I think he beats everybody else. Merab's just too good, man. He's overpowered, guys. Merab's like that character in the game with maxed out, like you know how the game only goes up to 99 overall on, like, attributes? Merab's cardio is like at 110. It's like a mod in the game. But yeah, man, Umar's elite. Merab's just too good. Let's get on to the next one we learned. We learned that Jiri, in my opinion, is the 2nd best fighter at light heavyweight. Now, a lot of people are going to say, what, dude? It's clearly Ankalaev. I don't know about that, dude. If you look, not to be Mr. MMA math out here, but if you look at the recent performances, people forget, man, Jiri Prochazka has only lost to Alex Pereira in the last, like, 10 years. He's beaten everybody else. He KO'd Volkan Oezdemir. He's now knocked out Jamahal Hill, you know? He submitted Glover Teixeira. Like, he KO'd Dominic Reyes. Like, Jiri Prochazka has way more impressive and better wins than Magomed Ankalaev. Magomed Ankalaev is taking guys like Rakic, who's on a 2-fight losing streak, to a decision. He looked kind of mid against Johnny Walker. I know he knocked him out, but I don't know, man. Magomed Ankalaev, like, he doesn't have any great wins, in my opinion. Magomed Ankalaev's best win is who? Who's his best win? Rakic, Anthony Smith. Like, the level of competition that Ankalaev has faced versus the level of competition that Jiri has faced and the way they've looked doing it. I think Yuri's the second best fighter at light heavyweight, and Jiri looked really improved. He had, like, it's impressive how much he improved his head movement from his last fight with Alex to now. Like, his head movement looked like it was way better, although he still kept his hands low. His head movement was better. He was bouncing in and out of there, looking like he was in the Matrix. And, yeah, too much for Jamahal Hill. Jamahal Hill just, I don't know, man. We'll get to Jamahal Hill in the next slide. But I think Jiri Prochazka proved that he's still that guy. And if it's not Alex Pereira with his laser precision accuracy, he's the next best guy, man. And how good is Alex Pereira, man? For Jiri Prochazka to look as good as he did in his 2 fights outside of Alex Pereira, and for Alex Pereira to make this guy look like an amateur, you got to put some respect on Pereira's name. But Jiri Prochazka, in my opinion, the second best light heavyweight. We'll see what happens after UFC 313. If Ankalaev beats Pereira, then obviously I can't say that. But as it stands right now, based on their performance and their resumes, I think Jiri Prochazka is the second best fighter at light heavyweight. Let's get on to the next thing. Jamahal Hill, we learned that he showed us he's nowhere near the skill level of Alex Pereira. Jamahal Hill's footwork is amateur levels. Like, if you watch this guy fight, he's so sloppy and defenseless on the feet. I know he's fighting a wild man in Jiri Prochazka, but Jamahal Hill's defense was so embarrassingly bad in this fight. Like, can you imagine what Alex Pereira would have did to this guy in a rematch? Like, the fact that he was coping about Alex winning that fight. This Jiri fight showed us that Jamahal Hill would absolutely Alex Pereira would absolutely sun Jamahal Hill in a rematch. This just solidified it for me. Jamahal Hill had a good moment. He knocked down Jiri, but outside of that, man, he kind of got pieced up. Like, it was a good scrap, but Jiri was ahead the whole time because Jamahal on the feet doesn't have great defense. He lacks footwork, and he just leaves his chin straight up in the air to get cracked, dude. A guy like Alex Pereira is going to crack that chin every single time. It wasn't because the ref stopped the fight and Herb Dean got in the way. No. Alex Pereira was going to land that left hook on Jamahal Hill's chinny chin 99 out of 100 times. And I think going forward, man, Jamahal Hill might be chinny. I mean, I don't know, man. Maybe Alex Pereira took his chin, took his soul, because is this going to be the same guy, you know? I think Jamahal Hill might be a chinny fighter from here on out. Not because his chin's necessarily bad, but because he fights with a lack of defense, and he hasn't fought good enough fighters to expose it. Like, this guy's best win was a 42-year-old Glover Teixeira. And I love Glover Teixeira, but he was 42, 43 years old, coming off an absolute war with Jiri. And it's like, outside of that, he struggled against a 38, 39-year-old Thiago Santos. He eventually got the finish. And then, you know, his best win outside of that is who? Johnny Walker. So it's like Jamahal Hill, I've always kind of felt, wasn't chalked up to be the great fighter that everybody chalked him up to be. He's okay. I don't even know if this guy's top 5 of light heavyweight caliber, man. I think Khalil Roundtree beats him. I'm going to keep it a buck, guys. I think Khalil Roundtree beats Jamahal Hill. This is not recency bias. If you go back and watch my previous videos before the fight, I was saying the same thing, that I thought Jamahal Hill was a bit overrated. I was picking him for a while. I switched my pick to Jiri Prochazka like a week and a half out from the fight, but I think Jamahal Hill is one of the most overrated fighters at light heavyweight. And with all that being said, boys, with all me trashing Jamahal Hill, respect to him. He put on a good fight. He went out there to war with Jiri. He scrapped. He put on a good show for the fans. He left it all out there. I respect him for that, but you can't get away with all that coping he did with Alex Pereira, all the smack talk he took, and he looked like that against Jiri. He looked embarrassing. So, yeah, Jamahal Hill showed us he's nowhere near the level of Alex Pereira. Let's get on to the next thing that we learned, which is Jailton Almeida has some hands, bro. Jailton Almeida was out there looking like Alex Pereira in the striking against Sergey Spivak. Only Sergey Spivak can make Jailton Almeida look like prime Alex Pereira in the striking. I don't get why this guy doesn't strike more. He has good striking, or at least it looked to be good in the fight. I know it's Sergey Spivak who doesn't really have the best striking, but Sergey Spivak looked okay. He got Jailton Almeida down in the fight, but Jailton Almeida eventually got up, got on his back, and flattened him out, and, you know, finished the fight on the ground, and that was it. But maybe if we see more striking from this guy might be actually really well-rounded. A lot of people like myself assume that this guy can grapple and nothing else. Like, Jailton Almeida is just a grappler, dude. Because outside of this fight, I haven't remember seeing any of Jailton Almeida's striking. All I remember is this guy just spamming takedowns over and over, laying on top of Derek Lewis, or eventually getting a submission or losing to Curtis Blades. I don't have any recollection of this guy, like, ever striking. This was like the first time where I saw Jailton Almeida striking, and I was like, oh, wow, it actually looks pretty decent. So Jailton Almeida proved to us, to some degree, he has some hands. And yeah, man, he runs through Sergey Spivak Listen, Sergey Spivak, he's one of those guys where he's good. He can beat the Blavs, and when he comes to the top of the division, he can't seem to get it done. Sergey Spivak got destroyed against Tom Aspinall, got destroyed against Cyril Gane, and now fighting Jailton Almeida, he gets destroyed again. I mean, he looked okay, Sergey Spivak, but he just can't beat like that top 6, top 5 level of fighter. He's number 7, I believe. Once he gets to the top 6, he seems to not be able to reach that next threshold of fighter. So respect to both of these guys. Jailton Almeida looked amazing. I do think he should fight the Cyril Gane next. He deserves that fight. I don't think Cyril Gane deserves another title shot to any degree. He's already had 2 and an interim title shot. So yeah, shout out to Jailton Almeida. Bro was out there looking like prime Wonder Boy. Let's get on to the next thing. We learned that Kevin Holland's entire career is a giant cope. Now, most people know this. Everybody's saying this. Kevin Holland knows that he's not championship caliber, and he copes by saying, dude, I don't care about being UFC champion. I just want to have the most fights in UFC history. He was on the Rampage podcast talking about he doesn't care about his fight this weekend. Well, I predicted Kevin Holland to get absolutely destroyed by Reinier de Ridder, and that's exactly what happened. Kevin Holland, his entire career is a cope. He takes the path of most resistance in every single fight. He fights at middleweight. That way he can have a built-in excuse. Oh, well, I lost because I fought the bigger guy. I fought the bigger grappler. I got out-grappled, you know. If I was smaller, then it's like Kevin Holland is 100% a welterweight. He's not a middleweight. I guess some respect to him for fighting at his natural weight class, but we're talking about he's fighting a guy in Reinier de Ridder that was probably weighed in 20 to 25 pounds bigger. Kevin Holland weighed in at 183 for this fight. And once I saw that weigh-in, I was already picking Reinier de Ridder by submission, but once I saw that he weighed in at 183, I was like, yeah, he's getting destroyed by Reinier de Ridder. Reinier de Ridder is a massive middleweight. There was no way that Kevin Holland was going to be the man to, you know, knock out Reinier de Ridder with such a size disadvantage. He could have, but Kevin Holland's power is a little overrated. I mean, he knocked out Joaquin Buckley back in the day, Jacare. Outside of that, who's he knocked out, you know? Kevin Holland, I liked him at one point, man, but after the whole shtick he did on the Rampage podcast and just the way he goes about his career, if this guy took his career serious, he could potentially be a top 10 fighter. Who knows? But he's so caught up in like coping about his career, about how he can't be the best, that he just, you know, loses fights that he should win. I'm not saying he should have beaten Reinier de Ridder, but there are a lot of fights in his career he should have won that he lost because he just chose to take the path of most resistance, like against Wonder Boy. But Kevin Holland is now 1-4 in his last 5. His back's against the wall. He needs a win in his next fight. Maybe the UFC won't cut him because he is a fan favorite in some people's eyes. I mean, he's not on Tony Ferguson levels of bad. He's 5-8 in his last 13. That isn't the greatest look. But I think this guy needs to take his training more serious. He needs to focus on his fights more because he's talking about he fights to make money. Bro, you're not going to be able to make money. They're going to ship your ass off to the PFL if you keep fighting like you're fighting. And yeah, and by what I said, man, Kevin Holland's career is a giant cope that he can't be champion. That's all it is. Let's get on to the next thing, which is Reinier de Ridder. This guy might actually be a legit contender at 185. I think that's what we learned. Reinier de Ridder in his 2 UFC fights goes through and submits Gerald Meerschaert. Who else submits Gerald Meerschaert? Jack Hermanson does back in the day. But outside of that, GM3 is the submission king. Reinier de Ridder knocked him down and then submitted him in the next round. And then as I predicted, he goes in there, submits and dominates Kevin Holland easily. This guy is Dricus du Plessis 2.0. And yeah, man, I think we can see this guy make a legit run at middleweight. Do I think he'll get the title? Probably not, but I think he's top 5 material at middleweight. Listen, middleweight is full of great grapplers. You got guys like Brendan Allen, like Anthony Hernandez, like Khamzat Chimaev, like Dricus du Plessis. There's a lot of great grapplers, and Reinier de Ridder might fit in that pack. I want to see how this guy does against like a Khamzat Chimaev, against like an Anthony Hernandez. I mean, who knows, man? But let's get this guy a shot at the rankings. He proved that these guys, bottom feeder guys like Gerald Meerschaert and Kevin Holland, are no match for him. He ran right through him. I won't say he ran right through GM3. He looked a bit sloppy and he had moments where he struggled, but he literally just ran through Kevin Holland. And I know it's Kevin Holland, but good win by Reinier de Ridder. Proved that he's somewhat of a contender at 185. Yeah, and I'm excited to see what this guy has in the future. Let's get on to the next thing we learned, which is Peyton Talbott's defensive wrestling is awful. It's probably the worst out of any prospect in the entire UFC. And I was glazing this guy to no end in a recent video talking about how this guy has potential to be champion one day. And after that performance against Raoni Barcelos, that was one of the most embarrassing displays of defensive wrestling I've ever seen out of any UFC prospect ever. Like, this guy has negative wrestling defense, and I do respect him for remaining calm throughout the fight and not panicking whenever he was in bad positions and actually looking decent in the striking. But Raoni Barcelos absolutely ragdolled and embarrassed Peyton Talbott and exposed his wrestling for what it is. And Yeah, man, this guy's. We need to send this guy to Dagestan for 2 to 3 years and forget, brother. Because if he doesn't improve that wrestling, he's just going to continue to take L's. If you look at the bantamweight division, it's full of great wrestlers up and down the top 10. Everybody can wrestle pretty decently, and I think this guy gets out grappled maybe by every single person in the top 15 of bantamweight. And you're talking about a guy who was high on Peyton Talbott. The glaze was endless by me. I was saying this guy has the ability to become champion, but if I'd have did my research and watched his earlier fights, I would have seen that his defensive wrestling was also always a little sus, and that maybe I was chalking this guy up to be more than he really was, you know? So respected Peyton Talbott. Whenever he was in trouble, he was eating good shots by Raoni Barcelos. He hung in there. He never panicked. He tried to put on a show, but his defensive wrestling, this guy needs to take off like 2 years just working on his wrestling. What was he doing the last 8 months? He had a 20-second fight and then took off 8 months. What was this guy doing? Hanging out with Frank Ocean and painting his toenails. That's what he was doing. But no, man. Peyton Talbott, work on your defensive wrestling, and maybe you'll have a shot at top 10 bantamweight one day. Just maybe. Let's get on to the next thing we learned, which is Rinya Nakamura showed some of the worst fight IQ we've ever seen in that fight against Muin Gafarov. I think going into the fight, Muin Gafarov was 1-2, and Rinya Nakamura was 9-0. Rinya Nakamura, a credentialed Japanese wrestler, in my mind, and in everyone else on the planet's mind, we're like, all right, Rinya Nakamura is going to go in there. He's going to take this guy down, smudge grapple him into a decision. That's typically what he does. But no, Rinya Nakamura decided, I'm going to try to be Wonder Boy tonight. I'm feeling my striking. Let me get in there and not even shoot a single takedown and get pieced up on the feet and lose my undefeated record. Like, what is up with these fighters recently with their terrible IQ? Like, even in the Jonathan Martinez versus, who was it? Marcus McGee fight. Jonathan Martinez has him out on his feet, right? Leg kicks, his legs dead. And what does he do? He pushes him up against the fence, Marcus McGee, as he's out on his feet with leg kicks and smudge grapples him into a decision. It's like, what are we doing with these fight IQ? Rinya Nakamura, world-class Japanese wrestling. What does he do? He stands on the feet when he's getting cracked the entire fight and loses his undefeated record. Where's the fight IQ of these guys, man? It just doesn't make sense. Like, this guy was one of the guys on the card I thought was a lock, but it turns out that none of the undefeated fighters on this card were a lock because they all lost. That's going to be the next slide, guys. Every single undefeated fighter on this card lost. Clayton Carpenter was 8-0. He lost. Rinya Nakamura and Peyton Talbott, both 9-0. Lost. Umar Nurmagomedov was 18-0. Lost. What is that? We got 18, 26. We have 44-0 combined between these guys, and now they're 44-4. They all lost. Undefeated fighters got absolutely fried and destroyed on this card. And is this a personal record of the most undefeated fighters losing their 0-1 card? Can somebody in the comments tell me? Because I don't think I remember a UFC card where more fighters lost their undefeated record. And it was crazy to see, man, because you know the crazy part? I picked every single one of these guys to win. I didn't. I didn't pick Clayton Carpenter. I picked Tagir Lembekov, but I picked Rinya Nakamura, Peyton Talbott, and Umar Nurmagomedov to win, and they all three lost. Absolutely insane to see. Four really great. Well, Umar and Rinya Nakamura I thought were absolute locks to win, but I was proved wrong, man. So what we learned from UFC 311, in my opinion, is that Islam and Merab Dvalishvili are the respective goats of their divisions. I don't think you can argue that much. And we learned that Rinya Nakamura doesn't know what wrestling is, despite doing it his entire life. We learned that Jamahal Hill is nowhere near Alex Pereira's level. And yeah, man, a lot to learn from this card. I just wanted to go over some of those things, and hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, drop a like and a subscription. I'm Unc Maxing out here, posting these videos, streaming every night. Thank you guys. I'm bouncing out this piece, you heard? Deuces.